Hi, this is Rev Ed with today's Back Porch Devotional from Psalm 130, verses 1 and 2. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. O Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my pleas for mercy. We very often find ourselves in one kind of depth or another. We can be drowning in sadness. We can be drowning in depression. We can be drowning in things like debt, or drowning in a terrible work situation, drowning in a relationship that seems to be stifling us, drowning in all sorts of ways. The psalmist does not indicate what kind of depths he is in, but he is crying out to God, which is, of course, the only thing to cry out to, the only one who can help us in that situation. And it's sad to say, but we have to admit that often we don't bother speaking with God until we're in the depths. I think it was C.S. Lewis who said that God whispers to us in our pleasures, but he shouts at us in our pain. And if we're going through pain today, then perhaps we ought to turn our attention to the Lord, who is in fact the only source of help. He addresses himself to the Lord. And here's a fun little Hebrew fact for you. When you're reading your Old Testament and you see the word Lord printed all in capital letters, that is a sign to us that the writer is using the divine name, the name often referred to as Yahweh. This is the name by which God revealed himself to Moses, and this is the name of this covenant God who has promised never to leave us or forsake us. It's a special name, and it has special meaning. And when you see that in the Old Testament, that means that the author is claiming God's promise to protect and save his people. This is someone who knows this Yahweh, who knows the Lord of deliverance, who knows the one who can save out of whatever circumstance. And so he is crying out from whatever depths he is in to this God. He says, let your ears be attentive to the voice of my pleas for mercy. You know, we have confidence that our God is a God of mercy, and that he will hear our prayers, and that he will rescue and save us in his way and in his time. We have to admit it's never on our schedule, is it? But the Lord does save us. Sometimes he saves us from our circumstances, but more often he saves us through our circumstances. And so we have this great paradox that our lives are sometimes, from an outward point of view, looking like a total mess. And yet, if we have the Lord, we know that we shall be all right, that he will bring us through whatever we are going through. This is what Paul is writing about in the 4th chapter of 2 Corinthians, beginning at the 7th verse. He says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may be manifested in our bodies. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our mortal flesh. This is the great paradox of the Christian life, that you have to lose your life in order to find it, that you have to surrender your life in order to get it back, that you have to take up your cross and deny yourself in order to actually discover yourself, which is the self that God has created you to be, the one he has designed for the deepest fulfillment and joy. And so as we go through these terrible times, we need to remember that God is using this stuff to shape us into the image of Christ, to strip us of anything that interferes with our true worship of him, to take us away from the idols that we have created, the other things that we serve, so that our hearts may be focused on him alone, and who is the only one who can give us deep satisfaction, peace, and joy. So whatever you're going through this day, remember to cry out to the Lord, and remember that he is the Lord who will save you out of all your trouble. one way or another. He has promised never to leave us or forsake us. And in Jesus Christ, we know that promise has been fulfilled. God's blessings be upon you this day.